The morning sun glinted off the still waters of Pine Valley Lake as I eased my truck into the gravel driveway beside my log cabin. The engine ticked as it cooled, and the scent of pine needles and fresh-cut wood filled the air. It was my sanctuary, with my own hands, tucked quietly between the lake and a wall of ancient timber. No neighbors for a quarter mile. No traffic, no deadlines, just me, my tools, and a weekend's worth of firewood waiting in the truck bed. I climbed down and tugged my work gloves tight. Each log of that oak had taken effort felled from a downed tree on my own lot, cut, split, and stacked with care. It was honest work, the kind my father used to say fed both body and soul. I hadn't even unloaded half the first layer before I heard it. The shriek of tires on gravel. I looked up. A white Lexus barreled down the drive like it owned the place, sleek and aggressive. The engine cut off, and the driver's window slid down with a hiss. "You can't dump that here," snapped a voice, sharp as glass. I blinked. A woman leaned over the console, oversized sunglasses, tightly coiled blonde bun, and an expression that could freeze soup. She looked like she'd stepped out of a homeowners association manual on aggressive compliance. "Can I help you?" I asked, already dreading the answer that would. She barked, pointing an acrylic fingernail at my truck. "It's stolen." I nearly laughed. "Stolen, ma'am. I cut that myself. From a deadfall on my property." She ignored the explanation like it offended her. "This land falls under the Evergreen Lakeside HOA. All timber is community managed. That tree belonged to everyone." I looked around the clearing. No sidewalks, no trimmed hedges or backyard trampolines. Just my cabin, the lake, and a sea of wilderness. "I've owned this land for 12 years, I said. "I'm not part of any HOA. You were annexed last quarter. It's all been filed. Your lot is now under HOA jurisdiction." "Funny, no one told me." "Well, consider this notice. You're in violation, and I'm reporting this to the board. You'll be fined." "You do that?" I said, already turning away. That was the mistake. She wasn't done. She pulled out her phone. "Yes, I'd like to report a theft in progress. A man is illegally harvesting timber on community property." I stared at her. She locked eyes with me like she'd just scored a win. Within 20 minutes, the sound of crunching gravel returned, this time from a county sheriff's cruiser. Two deputies stepped out, one tall and weathered, the other young and skeptical. "You called about a theft?" The older one asked her. Karen, the name suited her, immediately launched into a tirade about boundary lines, stolen logs, and dangerous chainsaws. The younger deputy approached me while his partner attempted to calm her. "You got ID, sir?" he asked. "Sure," I said, handing over my license and, more importantly, the deed. He read it. Then again he whistled low. "Yeah, this shows. You've got full title. No HOA mentioned anywhere." I pointed toward the old iron boundary marker at the edge of the clearing. "Tree fell inside my line. I didn't even touch anything near the trail." "Then you're good." Sorry for the interruption, but Karen wasn't satisfied. "That marker's probably fake. He's manipulating the boundary." "This whole pile of wood, ma'am," the deputy interrupted, holding up a hand. "You've made a false report. One more like this, and we'll cite you." She stood frozen for a beat, as if calculating her next move. "You haven't heard the last of this," she hissed, stepping back into her car. "I sure hope not," I replied. The Lexus sped away in a puff of dust. The deputies exchanged a glance. "You might want to get cameras up," one said. "These HOA types, when they want control, they don't let go easy." I nodded. I already knew. This wasn't about timber, it was about power. She didn't care about boundaries or firewood. She cared that she couldn't control what was mine. As I went back to unloading the logs, a thought lingered in the pine-scented air. This wasn't over, and when people like Karen tried to take what wasn't theirs, they usually learned the hard way that some things, like cabins, like timber, like freedom, weren't up for negotiation. 2 mornings after the confrontation, a thick envelope arrived, slid under my cabin door like a threat in business form. The letterhead read, "Evergreen Lakeside Homeowners Association," topped with a gold-trimmed pine tree logo and enough legal jargon to make a judge's head spin. "Notice of violation, unauthorized removal of community, TMB, fine $2,000, due in 10 business days." Attached was a printed photo of me, mid-swing with an axe, firewood at my feet. They'd been watching. My jaw clenched. I turned the page. Failure to comply may result in additional penalties, legal action, and referral to the County Resource Protection Committee. This wasn't a petty neighbor's spat. This was war. I called the number listed at the bottom. A cheerful voice answered. "Evergreen Lakeside HOA. This is Mindy." I cut to the chase. "My name's Mason Reed. I got a notice about timber. There's been a mistake. I'm not in your HOA." There was a pause, then a paper shuffle. "Yes," she said brightly. "We annexed your property during the most recent zoning alignment. You're now a registered lot under HOA jurisdiction." Funny. No one asked me. "You were sent a digital notice." "I don't do digital notices." "You're telling me you roped in my cabin without my consent?" "It was approved unanimously by the board. Section 4C of the Evergreen Charter allows for incorporation of contiguous, undeveloped or recreational lots. I live here full-time. Well, she replied with a soft chuckle. That's a discussion for the compliance team. She hung up before I could respond. My mind spun. Karen hadn't just thrown a tantrum, she'd weaponized a loophole. She'd got the board to claim my land like they were planting a flag. By the weekend, another notice arrived: unapproved structure, remove shed within 14 days. The shed in question was a weather-worn tool shed my father and I built 12 years ago. It sat 5 feet from my back deck, filled with chainsaws, oil, and the smell of history. Now it was non-conforming. Then came a warning about unauthorized firewood storage. Then a noise complaint for chopping wood during quiet hours. Every time I took a breath, another violation came down like a hammer, and the signature at the bottom of every one: Karen Whitlow, HOA compliance chair. She wasn't hiding it. She was proud. I started documenting everything. I took photos, printed my deed, mapped the boundary markers, and pulled property tax records. Everything I had proved I wasn't under their thumb, but on paper the HOA had planted itself like a parasitic vine, choking off my rights one rule at a time. That Saturday I was hauling a wheelbarrow of kindling when I saw her again. Karen, in her uniform, tennis visor, pastel blouse, clipboard in hand. She stood at the edge of my driveway like she owned it. "You're not supposed to store wood in open view," she said. "It attracts pests. So do uninvited guests. I'm giving you until Monday to comply, or I'll file a citation." I crossed my arms. "You can file whatever you like, but I'm not moving a single log and you're trespassing." She stepped forward, just enough to toe the property line. "This isn't personal, Mr. Reed, but if you live here, you play by community rules." "You mean your rules? They are legally binding." "You don't scare me, Karen. I'm not folding." She tilted her head. "Then you'll regret it." She left without another word, her Lexus vanishing behind the trees like a ghost, with a grudge. But that night, as I sat by the fire in my cabin, the weight of it all hit me. This wasn't just one power-hungry woman. It was a system. A system rigged by people who knew how to twist maps, bend charters, and crush anyone who dared stand alone. That's when I made a decision: no more reacting. No more hoping it would blow over if they wanted a battle. I'd bring the war. The next morning I drove straight to the county records office. The clerk, a middle-aged man with silver hair and a slow drawl, took one look at my parcel number and sighed. "You're the third one this month asking about Evergreen Lakeside." I leaned on the counter. "They're steamrolling private property. They added my lot without notice." He tapped his keyboard and scanned the screen. "Yep, I see the amendment. Annexed under map revision 1 for B. Approved by HOA vote, not by landowner consent. Is that legal?" He gave me a knowing smile. "Questionable. Depends on the zoning board and how loud you're willing to be." I left with a printed copy of the map revision and the number of a land use attorney, but I knew paperwork alone wouldn't win this fight. Karen was playing chess, not checkers. She'd fortified herself with bylaws, buddies on the board, and a fake smile backed by real power. So I started knocking on doors. My first stop was Ted Hanley's place 3 lots down, a ranch-style cabin with a Navy flag flying proud. He answered in a flannel shirt, eyes sharp despite his years. "You too, huh?" he said, after I told him what happened. "She'll find me for my flagpole." Said it disrupted the visual harmony of the shoreline. "Did you push back?" "Tried, got slapped with a landscaping violation instead." Next was Maria Alvarez, a retired schoolteacher whose doc had mysteriously disappeared after a compliance sweep. Then the Jenkins brothers, 2 good OL boys with matching sunburns and an ATV trail that Karen had deemed destructive. We met that weekend on my porch, coffee, documents, and shared frustration. "They're using the bylaws like weapons," Maria said, flipping through a stack of notices. "Most of us didn't even know we were in the HOA until we got fined. They're picking people off one by one," I added, "but together, we've got numbers." Turns out, under Evergreen's charter, any group representing more than 30% of annexed lot owners could demand a special referendum, a vote to challenge recent decisions. "We've got 38%, Ted grinned. "More if we count Jack and Leela down the trail." "We don't just fight this," I said, leaning forward. "We expose it." We called it Operation Timberline. I designed flyers with headlines like "Take Back Pine Valley and Your Land, Your Voice." We held BBQs, hosted informal gatherings on the lake, even launched a private Facebook group that grew to 60 members in a week. The stories poured in, each one a quiet injustice hidden beneath Karen's carefully curated HOA. Then came the catalyst. One evening I received a USB drive in an unmarked envelope. No note, just a label. "You'll want to see this." On it, drone footage of Karen standing on my property line, pointing and shouting at a man in a maintenance vest. Her voice, clear as day. "Just stack the wood here. We'll call it a community resource. He can't prove it's his." She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was orchestrating theft. That night, I emailed every local reporter I could find. One responded. His name was Alec Rains, a freelance journalist known for digging into HOA abuse across the state. He drove out the next day, asked the right questions, and left with a folder full of grievances. 2 weeks later, the article dropped. "The Tyranny of Evergreen Lakeside." how one HOA hijacked private property. Karen's face was front and center, caught mid-rant in her pastel blouse. The footage aired on the local news that same night. Within days, the county HOA Oversight Committee opened a formal investigation. Karen's authority didn't just crack, it collapsed. But the best part, the special referendum passed by a landslide. Every lot annexed under Map Revision 14B was officially withdrawn. The rollback was signed and sealed. I got my deed back untouched and unchallenged, and Karen, she vanished, resigned from the board, her Lexus missing from its usual spot as I stood by my freshly stacked woodpile, now safe from seizure. I felt something I hadn't in weeks' peace, but I knew there was still one final chapter to close. The air smelled like pine, smoke, and justice. A week after the referendum, I stood on my cabin's porch, sipping strong black coffee while watching the sun glint off Pine Valley Lake. The woods were alive again, not just with birdsong, but with the sound of hammers, laughter, and the reclaiming of peace. Karen was gone. Officially, she had resigned for health reasons. Unofficially, her HOA empire had crumbled under the weight of her own arrogance. But I wasn't finished. That morning, I loaded a slab of oak smooth dense and nearly 4 feet long onto the back of my truck. Burned into it with a soldering iron were 3 bold words: denied, stay out. I drove it straight to the Evergreen Lakeside HOA office, a converted lakeside cottage with fake shutters and a sign that now hung slightly crooked. No one stopped me as I walked up the porch. I set the oak slab gently against the front door and turned to go. Then I paused. I pulled a printed copy of the fine they'd issued me, one for illegally harvested timber, and taped it to the sign. I circled the amount with a red marker and wrote across it in thick, permanent ink, "Return to sender." That was for closure. Later that afternoon, my neighbors began arriving for what we called our bonfire of the Bulti. Ted brought the flag Karen once tried to ban. Maria carried a stack of violation letters. The Jenkins brothers brought folding chairs, a crate of fireworks, and a cooler full of beer. We lit the fire just before sunset, one by one. Neighbors stepped up and tossed their notices into the flames. Fines, warnings, compliance, threats, all reduced to ash. Each paper turned to smoke felt like a piece of dignity reclaimed. I took my turn last. My shed, the one Karen tried to declare illegal, stood lit in soft amber behind me. It hadn't been touched. No citations, no threats, just a quiet place, full of tools and memory. I held up the original annexation map, folded and stained from weeks of battle, then I fed it to the fire. As the flames leapt high and the lake reflected their glow, Maria stepped beside me. "You really turned the tide," she said, voice soft but proud. "We were all too scared to fight. You reminded us we didn't have to be." I looked out at the crowd, older couples, young families, veterans, and misfits, once isolated, now united. "I just stacked the wood," I said. "You all lit the match." The fire crackled, laughter rose, and for the first time in a long while, Pine Valley felt free. A few days later, I got a visit from Deputy Ramos, the same one who'd responded to Karen's original complaint. "Hell of a bonfire," he said with a grin, stepping out of his cruiser. "Heard it all the way down at the ranger station." "Community tradition now," I said. He handed me an envelope. "Final ruling from the county. HOA's annexation was ruled unlawful. You're cleared." I opened it slowly, even though I already knew. Then Ramos chuckled. "Oh, and by the way, Karen tried filing a counterclaim. Said she was emotionally traumatized by your resistance." I raised an eyebrow, "And she claimed your firewood pile was intimidating." We both laughed after he left. I went around to the back of the cabin and stood by my woodpile. The same one she once claimed was stolen, neatly stacked, clean, proud. I carved a small sign and posted it on the edge, facing the trail. "Private property trespassers will be charged." "Oh, I chopped." Tourists would think it was a joke. Locals knew better. Weeks passed and life settled into a rhythm again. I spent more time splitting logs, fixing fence posts, and walking the woods without looking over my shoulder. No more orange notices. No more clipboard threats. Just me, the land, and the quiet promise of hard-earned peace. I still keep that fine Karen sent me framed in the cabin, right next to a photo of Dad and me building the shed she tried to tear down. Some battles are worth fighting, not just for property lines or legal rights, but for the principle that a person's land is more than just dirt, it's memory, sweat, and freedom. And when someone like Karen tries to steal that, well, let's single quotes just say they picked the wrong cabin.